Today we're taking a look at the Clausewitz. This is a ship that is supposed to be a better version of a Hindenburg, a super Hindenburg, right? Which is a very good tier 10 ship. And this is my very first match. Like I said in the Dalarna video, I go into these first impressions videos totally blind. I try not to look at other impressions on the ship especially, but I don't even look at the stats. So that initial salvo looks amazing, right? We citadeled Hindenburg at extremely long range, so I was thinking, wow, this AP must be incredibly improved over Hindenburg, because a Hindenburg's not getting that salvo, most of the time at least. But I was wrong. This ship is basically just a Hindenburg. So I'm not sure where the super stuff is on it. I'm going to be pretty hard on this ship in this video, in fact. Mostly because it's not really an upgrade that much over a Hindenburg. I suppose really the only upgrades here are going to be the gun range, which is, you know, like a kilometer better, which is more comfortable to run reload mod, which is quite nice. But the base reload is longer. And that has an unfortunate effect on the DPM of this ship. And of course, cruisers are very much about DPM. So even though you get a small caliber increase up to 210 millimeters, the AP DPM is worse than Hindenburg. It's just worse. We'll look at charts and stuff at the end because I'm going to make a lot of statements in this video that I probably should back up with charts, so we'll look at that a little bit quickly at the end. The HE DPM is slightly better than Hindenburg. It's not good that it's being compared against a tier 10 as a tier 11, a super ship, right? You're going to spend a lot of money trying to get this ship, and it's really not that much better than Hindenburg. It has a 50 millimeter deck, which is quite nice, 30 millimeter upper belt, so, you know, we're able to auto bounce Montes, and if we angle well at long range, we're gonna auto bounce even things like Satsuma. But it's still a Hindenburg, okay? And especially, it's a Hindenburg with bad turret angles. It's got 2 degrees worse turret angles, so you're even more broadside when you're trying to get all your guns off. I wasn't sure if this was just an effect of the new camera I'm not used to, but no, it's true. It is actually 2 degrees worse turret angles yet on top of this. So you do have the pseudo turtleback in that, but man, this ship felt exactly like a Hindenburg to me. This match, of course, is in arms race, so we're getting buffs on our ships, and this one was like, okay, this is a super Hindenburg, and I had totally forgotten it was arms race. So in my head, I was thinking, okay, there's some pretty good alpha damage, there's some pretty decent reload here, but what I forgot to take into account, of course, was it's arms race. We're getting huge buffs. The second game that I'm going to show you today will be a normal match, and you're going to see, if you just replace the Clausewitz name in the bottom left corner and just said Hindenburg, the match would look exactly the same and nothing would be out of order. It's really quite a mystery to me what this ship is super. I know I've complained and a lot of people have complained about some of the gimmicks on super ships and how absolutely insane they are. And then I've said that I like a more vanilla experience, maybe just a straight up tier 11 version of whatever the tier 10 ship is. But I think this is a little too far in the other direction. It's still just a Hindenburg, it feels like to me. I don't know. Maybe I need more time with this ship. I've only played a few games, but based on these games, it felt like a Hindenburg. I have gone in and looked at some of the stats now after playing, and the stats show it's basically just a Hindenburg. So I really don't think this is going to be one to get. Maybe there's going to be some changes to it yet. I don't know. But really, right now, you're getting a Hindenburg experience for an insane amount of extra credits, right? These super ships aren't going to be cheap. Even if you don't go for them in the early access auction, they're still really expensive to just get a super ship in general. And of course, you have the extra repair costs. Even here, I was thinking, okay, that's a pretty good salvo into the Hindenburg superstructure with the AP. Maybe it's improved pen angles. Nope, no improved pen angles either. So, I don't know. It's kind of odd. I think that Wargaming's in a bit of a tough spot where, like I said, a lot of people have complained about the over gimmickiness of some of those super ships, and this feels like a bit of a pendulum swing to the other side. The Dalarna as well, it's a bit of a vanilla ship too, but I at least found it to be much better than Holland, right? Like, it felt like a tier 11 version of a Holland, right? So maybe that's why I was more okay with that ship, and I obviously enjoyed that one. I found it very comfortable to play. But this one, it's just a Hindenburg, so why? I don't understand. I think maybe something interesting they could have done, instead of giving it a crazy reload booster gimmick or something, what if they gave it just improved pen angles on the AP? That's something that the Hindenburg and the whole German line have kind of been missing, is reliable AP. So it would have been interesting to give it maybe a little better dispersion, improved pen angles, a little bit better pen in general, so you're going to get a few more devastating salvos at range. That kind of thing could have been very interesting, but here the AP, even though I'm using it a lot, I think it's a bit of a mistake how much I'm using it. I should be definitely using the HE more, because the HE does see a significant DPM increase. Not much on the fire chance, but the DPM is at least a little bit better thanks to much higher shell alpha damage. It's one of the weaknesses on the Hindenburg. I suppose the other major buff that this Clausewitz gets over a Hindenburg is its anti-submarine warfare. It actually gets planes. I have no clue why Hindenburg doesn't have planes, but it should. It should have these planes. I don't understand why. These big, giant cruisers that they just don't have planes. I don't get it. There's a lot I don't get about submarines, though, so that's not much of a surprise to me. But here we're using our same hydro to chase down a submarine, get a few hits in. He was pretty low on his battery or air supply, whatever they're calling it these days. So we're just going to run him down with hydro, and yeah, there he pops up, and we're going to be able to finish him off, which feels pretty good. This game, though, is very much out of hand. Epicenter tends to lead to a bunch of blowouts. I do call it Epicenter because Arms Race is just Epicenter, but worse. Unfortunately for me, we're not going to be able to carry this one since all those torpedoes are spotted. It's a handy hydro to have, but Clausewitz is a bigger ship than Hindenburg as well, so you're going to have to watch out for a lot of torpedo salvos. It's a little easier to hit a Clausewitz. We get a little bit lucky there. It's more than a little bit lucky, but the next salvo will make up for it, don't worry. Even though Clausewitz does have some of that turtleback like the other German cruisers do have, well, this Soyuz is going to remind us that we're still a cruiser, and going broadside to a battleship is often a bad thing. I was very focused on not dying here, or at least trying to stay alive as long as possible, but I want you to notice how many non-pens and torpedo protection hits we're going to get here. This is an Annapolis at what, 12, 13 kilometers? And our AP is not able to Citadel him. We're actually not able to Citadel him, which is very disappointing. I wasn't really focused on that. I was kind of, as you can see, looking around trying to dodge everything coming my way. But looking back on it, I was kind of wondering, why wasn't I getting Citadels? This guy's was very broadside. Maybe I was just getting poor dispersion, but no, it's actually just that we didn't have the pen to go through. Annapolis, of course, has some weird spaced armor too, so that's where the torpedo protection hits are coming from. But pretty disappointing. Even though it was a decent game, 182, 2 million potential damage, we did a decent job this match, but it's a Hindenburg. It's an arms race game, right? So the big extra power boost I was feeling with the Clausewitz there really came down to the arms race buffs, I think, rather than just it being a super ship. So on to a more normal game, right? We've got ourselves just a domination game, and our team is going to be losing this one pretty badly, actually. We're down a lot of ships, but we're actually going to make a bit of a comeback, and the Clausewitz does a pretty good job of being a very tough ship to kill. So, like the Hindenburg, it's just a good support cruiser. It's a good all-around ship. As you can see, still relying on my AP here. Looking back on it now, after seeing how bad the AP really is compared, it's just, you shouldn't be using AP against a Condi at this range. I mean, even if you're going to get some decent full pens, it's not going to Citadel. So it's kind of sad because I really have always wanted a Hindenburg to be a more consistent AP threat. Back in the day when they buffed it, and they buffed its HE substantially. It used to be far, far worse, mostly down to the pen on it, right? Didn't used to have that 50mm pen on the HE. I was really hoping for some AP buffs, because when you hit some AP salvos, it feels really good. I was hoping they would just improve the pen angles, anything on the Hindenburg, instead of making it into just another HE spammer. That's kind of what my thought was. Back in the day, though, it was really Hindenburg, Zhao, and Des Moines, right? So it wasn't really too many ships in the game, but I enjoyed it as, like, Zhao was this long-range HE threat, Des Moines was this close-range AP and HE threat. Hindenburg would have been a cool long-range AP threat. That's at least what I was thinking way back in the day. That's a very long time ago, but coming into Clausewitz, I was kind of hoping that was going to be the case. I saw the caliber increase. I was thinking, oh, okay, they're going to do different guns so that they can do some sort of artificial buffs or whatever to get it to have some decent AP, and that's just not the case. So we're using HE a little bit more this game, and it's going to go pretty well. So, 5k salvos into a Bourgogne, getting fires. It's pretty nice, but it's still just a Hindenburg. I don't know. I've been talking in circles, I feel like, this video. I hope it's made some sort of sense to you. But yeah, Clausewitz is a Hindenburg, so I'm not going to recommend you guys get this thing because it's just not worth the extra repair cost. It's not worth getting for the extra just upfront credit cost. Certainly not worth getting in an auction for, what, a minimum bid of 100 million credits, somewhere in there? Yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot, and it's just a Hindenburg. So, I don't know. It feels weird to me because I'm the guy that's constantly been complaining about the super ships being too gimmicky, too extra or over the top, right? I've wanted just the tier 11 equivalent of whatever line they're at. So I understand that this sounds a little funny now that I'm getting a kind of tier 11 equivalent of whatever the tier 10 is, that I'm also complaining about that. But I think there's a bit of a balance in there somewhere that I'm trying to hit that is, I don't want all these extra gimmicks, but I also want a ship that is a power increase over the tier 10. If that makes sense to you, let me know in the comments. That's kind of my view on the Clausewitz. And I think the Dalarna did a pretty good job of that. I think that ship does feel like a substantial increase over the Holland without feeling like it's just going to be nuts overpowered. It certainly would have been if it had its original DPM, though. If it was chart topping in DPM with those angles on the turrets, yeah, that would have been absolutely insane. So, I don't know. I think Dalarna is definitely going to be one to get. Clausewitz, probably not. You're going to get a similar experience out of a Hindenburg. So back to this game, our team has done a pretty good job of coming back into it. We've managed to take out a lot of the enemy DDs, which has certainly helped us to retain some map control. So now that the enemy team is pushing into us, this is really where a Hindenburg and a Clausewitz would shine, right? When people are pushing in, you're kiting away. This is kind of the dream, right? Where you're getting fires. You're even able to rotate fires on different battleships. It's awesome. And it does a pretty good job, although you're going to see near the end of this that my fire chance kind of dried up after some of these damage controls, which I think we could have done even more damage this game. But that's okay. Sometimes the RNG just doesn't quite go your way, and that's just fine, because the actual alpha damage is pretty solid out of the HE as well, especially considering the pen. These guys are still getting some pretty good hits in on me, though, so this is one of the reasons that I was concerned about the armor. The 50mm deck is certainly helpful, but even an Iwami got a pretty good salvo in on me, and he should be auto-bouncing off of the 30mm plating on the upper belt. So as much as the cruiser armor here is pretty solid, there's just funky angles that just happen to pen, right? And that's one of the other issues with this ship, being its poor turret angles, right? It's not bad, it's not GK levels of bad, but every couple of degrees, as soon as you're getting away from 30 degrees, which is the general auto bounce territory, right? If you can angle at 30 degrees, most AP shells are going to auto bounce at that angle. Anything a little higher than that, you're starting to get into the territory where you're actually going to start getting penned. So that's a definite weakness that the Clausewitz has. I do think that this extra range is super duper handy, though. I feel much more confident in running reload here compared to the Hindenburg, for example. That's a ship where I want to be running reload. I want that extra DPM on the Hindi, but that 17.8, I think, on Hindenburg can feel kind of bad. So increasing that to almost 19 on the Clausewitz feels pretty good. At least that, in that regard, I do think this ship is quite a lot better. The Satsuma is really all that's left for the enemy team here, and we're going to try and farm them out. Notice that my angle here is absolutely horrible. This isn't the best angle I could be taking, but we're running prop mods, so at longer ranges like this, we can certainly do a better job of dodging shells, right? So we do manage to get away. Our acceleration is decent in these kind of scenarios, but you still don't want to be playing the game of chicken with a Satsuma, especially if he pops his accuracy and actually manages to hit you. It's pretty scary. Although the 50mm deck should protect us if we're at longer ranges like this and we angle perfectly, bow or stern in, that should help us a lot. But seems like he's a little bit focused on something else. So we'll try and farm him out. But yeah, not getting many fires here. Although our dispersion's not amazing, we're not hitting too many shots either. So, you know, yeah, the Hindenburg has not the best fire chance, and neither does the Clausewitz, at least compared to some of its contemporaries like the Henry, right, or the Zhao. So it's one of the weaknesses that the Clausewitz and the Hindenburg both share on its HE. But the pen is quite nice. As you saw, not many shatters unless we were hitting a gun there on the Satsuma, which feels really, really good. So another 190k feels great. Confederate, we did a pretty decent job, although the Benham really carried it out for us, as you can tell. So like I mentioned, I wanted to talk a little bit about some of these stats here near the end. As you can see, Clausewitz on the left, Hindenburg over here on the right. And we look at main battery, yeah, 35 on the Hindi, 37 on the Clausewitz, just a little bit, right? It's just enough to make it a little bit worse. Clausewitz, of course, does have the anti-submarine warfare planes, whereas Hindi just gets those depth charges. That's a big difference here. But other than that, the torps are the same. The AA is basically the same. 6 kilometers, though, on Clausewitz rather than the Hindenburg with its 5.2. But it's still not the best AA values, as we're all aware. Now, if we move over here to compare a little bit more directly, yeah, things are pretty similar, and you know, speed similar, detection pretty similar, rudder maybe slightly better, but larger turning radius. I mean, it doesn't seem like a tier 11 and a tier 10, especially here. Look at this. AP DPM goes down. Hindenburg's 433,000. And this is all stock, right? No upgrades or modules, that kind of thing. 425 for the Clausewitz, which is quite sad. And you would think then it would have a lot of buffs to its ability to pen. Maybe it's got better dispersion. Nope. None of those things, unfortunately. But yeah, the HE is a little bit better, as we can see here. So that's kind of nice. But the main thing it comes down to is the reload, right? 10.5 seconds versus 9.8. And Hindenburg used to have a 10.5 second reload before it got buffed. So maybe we'll see that in the future. The range is quite nice as an extra. But you can see dispersion, basically the same. Over here, if we look at the AP shells, yeah, the pen is no different, basically. The ricochet angles, no different. Like, this is where I was hoping maybe there'd be something that would make the AP just a lot better on Clausewitz. Nope, not here. Here we've got a penetration chart for both the Clausewitz and the Hindenburg. Clausewitz in blue, Hindenburg in green. And there's not much difference here. It's very, very small differences. Like 20 millimeters at 10 kilometers, that's hardly anything. See, if I add something to this chart, suddenly these don't look so good, the Clausewitz and the Hindenburg down here. I mean, it's Petro, so maybe not the most fair comparison, but hey, those gun calibers are pretty close, right? 210, 203, 220, like the caliber is in there. And yeah, it's just a massive difference. So Clausewitz is not good on AP pen at all. So yeah, not too impressed by the Clausewitz. I'm pretty conflicted though on whether I think this thing should be massively buffed. Here's that 50 millimeter deck I was talking about, 30 on the sides, 27 up front, 40 millimeter icebreaker. Like, the armor's pretty decent. It's a pretty nice buff. I wouldn't want it to be 50 everywhere, because then suddenly it's just impossible to take out, like a Petro or Napoli, those kinds of things. But, you know, a little bit of an armor buff feels pretty good, especially at longer ranges. But other than that, it doesn't really feel like that much of an upgrade. If we look at the commander, just using my Hindi captain, trying to get some survivability since a bit of a jack of all trades ship that just kind of wants to sit there and use its DPM to win games and fights. AR is very nice, even top grade gunner to get a little bit extra out of the guns. Grease the gear is quite nice, of course. Gun feeder, new gun feeder, always awesome to take. On the equipment side of things, I ran a reload build. I'm running upgrades to main guns, like the aiming systems here. The dispersion wasn't even that amazing, and we had aiming systems. But that's kind of been the German cruisers thing, though. Hindenburg's not that accurate either. But yeah, pretty disappointed in the Clausewitz. I was really hoping that it would just be, yeah, that tier 11 Hindenburg. When I saw that there weren't gimmicks, I was hoping that the AP would just be amazing or something. But it wasn't. So I hope they buff this ship, and I hope they buff it in a way that isn't just by giving it special reload gimmicks or something like that. I really love this idea of super ships just being tier 11s. I think that's more interesting and more fun to play against. But this is tier, I don't even know, 10.5? Maybe not even that. Maybe it's 10.1? Let me know, though. Let me know in the comments below. I appreciate you guys watching. This is a bit of a long video. I hope it wasn't too complainy and you understood what I'm getting at here. But yeah, appreciate you watching, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.